Hey all, Siege here, and today I gotta run something by all you Warframe lore fans and see how you handle it. But first, let's give a little context, shall we? Now, spoilers ahead for anyone not at least up to the War Within and Chains of Harrow narrative, by the way. So, you know the drill. Concerning the Tenno, there is an incident they are involved in years ago where a kind of celebration turned massacre occurred, where the Tenno slaughter the Seven, beings who were held above all else within the Orokin society. Now, it's unclear if they were Orokin in the way we see Ballas, as he was in fact one of their executors, Orokin whose sole purpose was to execute the will of the emperors. It's been speculated that these emperors may have even been on par with the Tenno, also possessing what's known as an Oro, a kind of soul that exists simultaneously within and without the void. This is how Tenno are almost immaterial in nature, able to seamlessly transfer into the physical warframes and the golden maw, as well as never quote-unquote die. The Orokin society, under these emperors, typically used kuva, a type of mystical oil that allowed for the transference of one's mind and potentially soul to move from one vessel to another in a process called continuity, something the Grineer Queen specifically referenced during the War Within quest in wanting to preserve their own existence. As mentioned in the quest, the U-Van they refer to is actually created from Oro, which Teshin can be seen scraping from a Tenno's transference pod at one point. In fact, during Kuva's Siphon and Flood missions, the Queen implies that Kuva is a byproduct of the Tenno's transfer in and out of the void. Now keep this in mind because it's going to be relevant in a minute. So there's something that's always bugged me about this incident they are involved in years ago, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is that we're told that the Tenno were responsible, and yet none of them remembers what really happened. Their memories of whatever transpired completely erased after the fact. Supposedly, the Orokin were celebrating the Tenno's dominance during the Old War, so much so that these incredibly wise beings that, remember, may have also had a soul just like the Tenno, originally ordered the death of the Archimedean Margulis due to her helping said Tenno, as well as being directly responsible for the Tenno's forced enlistment into the Orokin army, eventually becoming their only true resistance against the sentients. Bear in mind, these beings are said to never leave their own isolation pods for almost any reason. And yet, in this instance, they're okay with coming face to face with what amounts to be the gods they've been keeping in chains. Seems like the kind of thing really anyone with half a brain would at least prepare for in some way, don't you think? I guess what I'm trying to say is, given that we learned both Nata and the Tenno are manipulated into wrongly believing that she loved the children and took them away to protect them after assuming the role of the Lotus, something she reveals during the Ropoliolis fight. Is it that hard to question the idea that the Seven Emperors, not really seeing any real way to exist forever without constantly dealing with war, devised or were potentially offered a way into the void indefinitely and used this incident to hide their escape, to exist forever in the space between spaces? The Origin system's current situation, essentially bereft of natural life, is all because of Orokin experimentation. The Grineer? Yeah, that's the Orokin's fault. The Sentients? Yep. They sent artificially intelligent beings into the void as a slave race and stripped them of their ability to reproduce. Big surprise how that turned out. The Infested? Yep, you guessed it. Orokin made. Now, one of the things the Orokin were in fact successful with utilizing was void energy in many different ways. In fact, their work with the void is unparalleled, and these beings would have priority over whatever information was learned during this process, as well as unfettered access into any mysteries they may have come across. Beings like this couldn't just disappear, as their society is pretty much based on their will. And what's interesting is, the Orokin Empire was never really the same after the Seven's absence. So, I think there's a real possibility they still exist, especially if they are Tenno-like in nature. I mean, ask Ortis how easy it is to kill an Orokin nobility. He'll explain just how difficult it can be. Truth be told, not only do I believe that they aren't dead, I think they may have even given the Orokin a kind of parting gift for their trouble. And it might be this. A comment from a longtime supporter of this channel led me down a rabbit hole to some rather thought-provoking possibilities, so I want to thank you first for the breadcrumbs that led me to noticing that the reliquary drive obviously has a port for the key we use to activate it, but if you look closely, there are 7 ports. That's a curious number, isn't it? Makes me wonder if there are, say, 6 more keys. If so, what happens if all 7 are inserted? Conversely, what happens if we put our current key into one of the other ports? Personally, I found the mission to get the reliquary drive itself bizarre. Sai speaks in riddles, there's a key sitting in the middle of what appears to be a tendril of the void, yet it's much more reminiscent of what we see during the Chains of Hero quest, which to me seems pretty significant. I mean, it's obvious the man on the wall is going to play a huge role in whatever transpires given his already precarious involvement, but what if the Emperors, increasingly aware of the fact that the Orokin Empire is destined to fail, their home becoming a self-imposed wasteland, and every significant innovation they've come up with in the recent past to continue their existence either destroys the system or, worse, turns on them and fights back. And we're just looking for a way out. Given their extensive research into the void, I think it's pretty safe to assume the man on the wall is something they've known exists for as long as they've utilized that void, and most likely have either come in contact with him through his desire, or maybe even their own. What if the Emperors were offered immortality, true immortality, by the man himself, to exist as an Oro, rather than an Orokin, popping in and out periodically for them as well, saying,
"You mad at me, kiddo? Did you forget? You owe me. You owe me."
Makes me think about the name Orokin. Kin of Oro. Family and relations of Oro. Maybe this goes back even further than anything we've seen, influencing even the naming conventions of the society itself. After all, the Orokin were considered, by lesser races at least, humans included, to be sky people, if you will. Obviously, the man on the wall changed the Tenno from whatever they were into the Tenno they are now, so there's no reason to assume he couldn't do that same thing for other beings. Maybe this is how the 7 are said to have those same Tenno-like souls, and furthermore, would allow them to appear to have been massacred when in fact only their physical form was affected. Is it impossible to believe inserting our key into another port would invoke a different finger? What if this is a finger of one of those 7? I mean, the Orokin specifically made this contraption so they know how it works and where this thing came from, or else they wouldn't have built it the way it is. Maybe the power the Orokin utilize in order to navigate the void comes directly from this finger charged with the void itself. A physical tether to one of the 7 is a vector to channel the energy. You know what? Maybe, just maybe, we might finally have a clue, a real clue, as to the identity of this character. They really look Tenno-like in appearance, don't they? And are very much associated with the void from what we already know. Perhaps this was a product of their involvement with the man, and maybe they went through the same process as the Tenno, only maybe willingly. Makes me wonder if this is why the Zariman was sent into the void. You know, something about that particular flight always seems suspicious to me. And more I'm beginning to believe that ship made the trip into the void specifically to induce exactly what occurred. Potentially confirmed right here during the Era quest.
Era speaks. Master Era. He speaks true. The Orokin are gone. The bios are divided. Infighting over what remains. Only the Tenno.
The Tenno. The enemy.
Yes.
Made by you. To kill us.
Yes.
The Tenno were made? I thought it was an accident. Regardless, it does seem like the man is getting exactly what he wants. And I want to believe this finger belongs to the man on the wall in some way. I really do. Potentially even representative of him being a manifested consciousness of the void. But I just have this feeling it's a red herring, or something put into a story specifically to throw a person off the trail, so to speak. The man showing up on the drive itself, bending his finger over, the voices coming from the pod all the time, to me, It just feels too obvious for a character that's been so shrouded in mystery up to this point. I'm not saying it's not the case, I'm just saying my spidey sense is tingling when I think about it, that's all. But what do you think? No matter what, things are coming into focus more and more, and I believe we might already be witnessing the pieces on the board starting to move forward in Warframe's narrative, which is, amazeballs, because I love to speculate. But what did I miss? Let me know in the comments, and if you send me down an interesting path, either for this video or another one, you might get a shout out. With that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video today, and hope it gives you something to think about during these weird times, right? I hope you all have a wonderful day today, a wonderful rest of your week. I'll talk at you on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.